All right. Hello, folks. Good afternoon, good evening. Hope you're doing well. So welcome to another episode 2, I guess, if we're going to be counting, of working on getting my TDD game online. As a reminder of what the game looks like, looks something like this. So this is the board layout. And yesterday we were working on basically turning the game into a state machine. So what I'm going to do today is basically just review that and go back to Jira and start planning out some steps to do. Yeah, and that's what we're going to do. So let's get to the code. No, I didn't do a git push. I should do a git push. Because as I mentioned yesterday, the let's go here, not here. Here. That's the ensemble timer. We're not working on that. So go to GitHub. I don't remember where I put it. Let's see. So it is JitterTed's TDD. All right. Yeah, that's fine. Right, there's not do a git push. There hasn't been a git push for 3 years. That was basically the last time I worked on it, before yesterday. So one thing, as I mentioned yesterday, and I'll reiterate, is the project is not open source. So open source has a very specific meaning, despite some people not being clear on what it means. If it is an open source project, that means it has an open source license, which means usually you are free, not in terms of price, but free in terms of what you can do with it. I think the word free in English is actually, unfortunately, very confusing. People say free as in beer, not as in some, not that that makes any sense to me. But basically, if it's an open source license, you can take the code and put it in your stuff and reuse it and do whatever you want with it, as long as you abide by the license, and there are various open source licenses that are approved. This is not open source. If you take it, even though there's not much there right now, if you take it and run it on your own, I won't know about it. But if you try and sell it or provide a service around it, you're going to hear from me. This is under what's currently a fair source license. So the idea is that you can see the source, which you can see because you're watching it on the stream anyway, but it's not yours to do as you will. If you want to license it, you got to talk to me. Whether that will change, I don't know, but that's the current license, and I just want to sort of put that out there. Yeah, freeze and freedom as not in his beer is like, I prefer the freeze and freedom and not as in puppies, just because I find that more amusing. Hey there, Jonas, welcome. Anyway, so I should do a push because there's no reason not to. So let's go ahead and do that. Actually, let me do a commit and then I'll do a push since I have the diagram. So this has all of the stuff we did yesterday in terms of upgrades and such. So let's close that. You can go away. You can go away. Do I want to play around with... trying to format this a little bit better? Let's see if I can do that. Will that matter? Is that better? That's not better. Yeah. All right, I think that's as good as I'm gonna get it. So let's see. Right. So yeah, I'm still annoyed that this is sort of in the center here. It's like, why isn't this at the top? I don't know how much I don't know how much I want to bike show that. Oh, you wanted to play around with that? Yeah, sorry. Well, now you can. I wonder if I can move this down. Predict testable fail. That really goes here. I don't think that makes any difference in terms of stuff. Code for feature. That's a little better. Maybe, maybe not. One thing I wish Plant UML could do is sort of export it as... I know it can export as a PNG. It would be nice if it could export it as something that's more manipulatable. Maybe an SVG or something else. I don't know. If I put it up between predict state and commit state, let's see. So this one? I guess that's somewhat better. Can I do an R here? There we go. Thank you. That helped. So still long. I would like it. I mean, I almost kind of want it, you know, where it looks like this. And that's the state diagram, but I don't know. And I don't really want to spend the time trying to get it to look that way. But at least the entry point's in the right place and it sort of goes down, and then the last step is here. That's fine. And probably write code for feature. Let's see. Can I do an R here? What if I do an U? Eh. No, we'll leave it there. Oh, that's even better. There we go. All right, that's it. It fits on the screen, and it's the decision's a bit weird. No, that just made it worse. Yeah, that's okay. That's good. That's good enough. Yeah, and if Astrid, if you want to make some suggestions, but I think this is there's no crossing of lines, which is really what's important to me, because I just find those really confusing. So this is more than good enough. So let's commit it. And so that's pushed. Okay, these notifications. I thought, do I even care about these? No, all right. I'd like them to disappear, but okay. So we've got our diagram. Let's see, can we zoom in a bit? And so what do we have on our Jira? So I think then what we've got is player is on a tile, and then player's command causes change, potentially transition to new tile. So let's see. So if so each player, I guess, has its own copy of the state machine. And so let's see. So the commands that might come in are move pawn, draw card, and also draw full. So basically, after your turn is done, you often draw back up into to 5 cards. The other things that happen are you discard a card. And this often causes a transition. And play a card. So the board has 9 separate tiles. It also has, so going back to sort of my mock-up, where is my mock-up? Too many windows open. There it is. So there is this area, which is, let's annotate this. annotate text. I might want to use a different tool for this. So this is the player's hand. Let's make this bigger. This I've been calling the workspace. But I think I'm just going to call it the in-play area. And so this is where, so as you're playing, where's the button? There it is. So as you're playing, let's say you've got, let's pick some cards. Yeah, let's take that. So if you wanted to exit here, you discard. So let's say we did that already. So we've discarded 2 cards to get from here to here. We play a write code card. So that's a play. So that goes here. And then we move. So that's a transition that takes you from one tile to another. Then you might want to play a less code card. So that doesn't cause any state transition, but that does cause clearly a state change. So your play area is active. And then if you play a predict card, that then triggers the test results. So let's say the test results is this one, which is if you have 1 or more less code cards to play, then it's as predicted. So this gets put in the test results discard pile, and then your prediction came true. So you, so that transition is actually dependent on the tests as expected. And that's what we had. Yeah, I think in play is what I call it, or the play area. So once that happens, you discard your play area. Yeah, so that's what we'll call it. I think I originally called it workspace because I wanted to sort of have this sense of, you know, that's your code base, your code workspace. But I think play area is what I've been talking about. So let's go ahead and text. I really should switch tools, but I'll do that. So this is play area. There is one other, yes, that's true. There is one other thing that happens, which is your so for example, the tech neglect or tech debt cards, like those stay in your play area, but they're really in a different area, because they basically stick around until you resolve them. So I think I want an even separate area for that. So like when we're playing the physical game, those are kept separate from the area, your play area, because the play is pretty much for your writing code, less code, predict. These stick around though, as I said, until you resolve them. Stack of shame. So there's basically the tech neglect area, and so maybe that's just what it is. So let's do this. So we'll slice this here. Why is that color? That's a terrible color. Make it black. And so then nope, not rectangle. So then this is and of course, like anything else, names can always change. Yeah, I'll switch cameras in a second. So that, yeah, okay. So we've got play area and tech neglect area, and those are, I think those are the two areas. So let's go back here. So let's so there's the tiles, there's the the action, what do I call it? The action card deck. That's the action card, discard, pile. There's this, and then there's the same things for test results. And I think that's it for sort of that applies to everyone. So it's per game. And then we have per player, we've got your hand, your, what did we just call it? Your play area, and your tech neglect area. You also have your commit tracker and your risk tracker. And there's also 6 die. And I guess technically you have a pawn. Sure. So you've got a pawn, you've got a hand, you've got your play area, you've got your tech neglect area. I think that covers it. So those are sort of our objects, as it were. So player is on a tile. Technically, it's the pawn that's on a tile. But I don't know if I want to differentiate that. So player is on a tile. Yeah, pawn is just a representation. So player's on a tile, player's command. So we've got draw card, discard card, play card. Is there any other action that they do? I think that's it. You either move, draw, discard, or play. Well, you can't actually do nothing. So you must end your turn. There's a little bit of variation in terms of, can you just skip your turn? So I've played it where you, no matter what, you have to play or discard 3 cards, and that's your turn. And then I have to go back at the rules that I wrote. It may be that you could, I don't know if I even specify this. Again, I have to go back to the rule book. The other option is that you could just say, there's nothing I can do given the cards I have, but I don't want to discard any. So I guess you could just end your turn. I think because I want to make this flexible over, like, I don't want to restrict anything. If people want to play it that way, I think that's okay. So basically, end turn. Yeah, so that'll be a command. So then there's something keeping track of, so we have sort of the state machine for the board itself, but what we need, a player also has a state machine. I don't know if I need a full-on state machine diagram, but the things they can do, basically what defines a term. Yeah, I don't know how I'll end up implementing it. I don't want to pull in any kind of libraries for this, because I don't think that's needed. If it turns out that it's designed that way, that's fine. Because there is, it does need to know, though, like, is your turn still going, or is your turn up? So I'm going to delete this because I don't think that applies anymore. So maybe it isn't a, I mean, you could probably put anything in a state machine. I mean, it may, yeah, I'm not sure what to call it. We'll leave it as state machine. So, so either they play or discard 3 cards, or explicitly end turn. So that's pretty simple. So I'm kind of envisioning, the command processor. And so like, do I define commands as their own objects that then go and change the state as appropriate? Or do I have sort of one place where commands come in and then it sort of dispatches? I don't know that I have a sense for which one is better. I kind of prefer the latter. I think Java, especially with switch expressions and things like that, I think might make the latter one better. But I don't know. We'll see. Is this enough to sort of get started? The more I'm writing this, the more I'm wondering, like, do I start over? Like, I've got a lot of code here. I don't know. Some of it's useful. I don't know how if all of it's useful. Uh, like things like deck, I'd probably keep because those work well. Um, but there's just not a lot of code. Yeah, I'm tempted. I'm very tempted to just start over and then scavenge code from this project. So let's. How am I going to do that? I think the way I'm going to do that. I don't think I want to start a new project. I think what I'll do is pretty much change this to be a not a multi-module project, put all the dependencies up here, and then those submodules in a sense are ignored. They just happen to be just directories where there's stuff. Oh, creating a new submodule, that might work too. That actually has the advantage of, so if I remove backend as a module, and it's just a directory of code, then I actually lose all of the parsing, right? Because it doesn't consider it part of the project anymore. Although that might be a problem from a package standpoint. Do I care? I don't think I care. Let's try that. So let me do a commit. Oops. And then let's say we delete our modules. Let's delete front end. I don't know what you think you're doing. Okay. And back end, let's grab the let's look at the POM. I think I can just grab all of this. So if we get rid of that and do this, and then we get rid of packaging. And reload. Let's do I'd like IntelliJ to really reload, because it shouldn't be picking up front end anymore. I don't know why it still thinks front end is part of this project, unless it's just looking at the POM file. So let's rename this. Actually, let's just delete it. There we go. Yeah, and I didn't quite understand that dialogue, but that's fine. This POM is no longer recognized as a POM file, so that's good. And we could probably delete this just to be sure. So now all this code is just sort of unparsed Java code, which I don't think is a problem. So let's go look at our project structure. So that's fine. Modules, this should just be the one. I don't... So I'm now missing actual code directories at this level. So that's fine. We can just create them. So I want directory. So we want yes, please create all of these. Oh, that was awesome. Thank you. And now what do we want in our POM file? So we've got the WebSocket, we've got the dev tools, we've got test. I think there's a more recent version of this, yeah. So we'll update that. That's probably good enough for now. And I need to tell it to please stop asking me to import, just import it. Okay. And at some point I'll bring in ArcUnit and the other stuff, but for now that's fine. So so let's go ahead and create some packages here. We'll create I'm actually gonna use my other domain to really clarify that it's separate, but it's still TDD game. And under TDD game, I'm gonna have domain. And then we'll make application. And we'll make adapter. And that's all we need for now. All right, so what's the first thing I want to do? I think it's have a player join the game. So I'm going to close these. Whoops. And I can close that. So let's see. I divide adapters into inbound and outbound. Where is it? So for example, like here, so everything, I basically split it down the middle, and everything on this side are inbound adapters. Alistair Coburn calls those driving or primary adapters. I call them inbound. Fetchers and so on are, yes, are fetchers, notifiers, and persistence are outbound adapters. So any kind of user input is always going to be on the inbound side because it's always going to trigger something to happen in the application. Outbound are what Alistair calls secondary or driven, where the application initiates it. So the application will never initiate input. It can't, sort of by definition. Does that answer your question? Do I differentiate between oh, I see. Do I differentiate on the inbound side? No, because they're all triggers. So the reason why I differentiate on the outbound side is because that's where you need test doubles. So you need spies or fakes or stubs. But on the inbound side, you don't, because you're initiating or triggering actions directly. I guess I call them triggers. That's what they do, but that's all they do. There's nothing else that on the inbound side that doesn't trigger, because if it doesn't trigger, then what's it doing? But sure, yeah. The inbound adapters trigger things to happen in the application. So what's the first trigger? So the first trigger is player joins game. Player creates game, because there's got to be a game for you to join. I assume you've watched my presentations on the topic, right? Astrid, remind me to contact you offline about something. This has to do with a thing I'm working on with Claire Sudbury, which is very much relatable to Hexagonal. Do I want to do this before I get to this? So somebody needs to, if you're going to join a game, the game has to exist. If a game doesn't exist, somebody's got to create it. And the somebody is going to be, what did I say? Not this one. Some kind of account. Do I want a player to be able to do I want someone who's not going to play to create a game? Do I treat player and account as the same thing? I don't know that I have the answer to that. We'll just assume that there's a player. So player creates a game. But I think right now I can, host. Maybe that's a better name. So host creates a game. Thank you. So I envision that, let's say a company has bought a license for, you know, a team, whatever size that team is. Any one of those team folks can initiate a game and then invite others with a link. Or if I know a game is happening, I can go say, show me the games that are available for me to join. And then I can choose one of those. I think we'll focus on this one. So let's also start creating ubiquitous language. There's player and there's host. Obviously things like game and deck and card and tile, etc. But that we have above. There's player, there's host. And there's team. I think I'll call them team for now. Can't decide on team or group. Goal, I don't think there's a goal. I mean, there are sort of, what is the win condition? But I'm not quite sure what you mean by goal other than that. The goal is to have fun. I know that's probably not what you meant. Yeah, because the win condition can change, because this can be either or it can be time boxed. So one thing that I think I'd like to think about earlier rather than later is before we had pawn that indicates where a player is, but there is the variant of the game where there is a single pawn. So the pawn is not directly connected to a player in that case. It's connected to, what do we call everybody who's in the game? Are those just players? Because I want to treat them as a group. Is that the group? So there's team, which is sort of an account-based thing who can and then there's group, which is set of players currently playing a specific game. Yeah, I agree that's true for sort of a development team, but I think we're in a different domain. But I do want to differentiate those because there's and it's certainly possible that a player representing that an account representing a player that an account can have player representations in multiple games. But the reason why I want this term group of like who is actually has joined the game or they're members of the game, is that again, that variation of either a player has a single pawn. No, they wouldn't have more than one pawn. I mean, I can conceive of a variation of the game where you're actually controlling multiple pawns. But that seems... that would be very much sort of to simulate like I am a developer and I'm actually on multiple teams and I'm contributing to multiple code bases. I mean, if we go there, then what we're saying is there's a many-to-many relation between players and pawns. Hire more devs. That's always the answer. That is interesting because if it is a many relationship, I mean, that's sort of ultimately flexible, which can create some interesting variations of the game. For example, you got 6 people who want to play the game, and you group them into 2 pawns where there's 3 players per pawn. That sounds really complicated. Like I can totally visualize that happening with the physical game. Is that Yagni? That would be middle management. Is that Yagni though? What I'm trying to balance here is like, what decisions do I make now that will be hard to reverse later? Because if you're going to have 2 people playing the same game, then it's basically... Sorry, if you can have sort of 2 sets of 3 people playing the same game, or are they not just playing different games? Because I do those things with a physical game because there's certain restrictions, but with a virtual game, I don't know. One player playing more than one pawn. I actually see the opposite. I can't see a single player having multiple pawns, but I can certainly see multiple players controlling one pawn. So that's the main variation I have, is that if you've got 4 players, everyone is moving one pawn. So yeah, so I'm going to call this Yagni for now. You ain't going to need it. Although we might. Maybe this is just premature. I don't know. I don't know if it's Yagni. I feel like I can totally conceive of rules and variations that use that, but I think that's probably premature. But definitely I want to support where the group controls a single pawn. Now, with that variation comes a whole bunch of interesting things around trading cards, which is not something that I have in my rule book right now. It's in my variation rule book, which I haven't published yet. I need to do that. Because pretty much yeah, so very much switching it from a versus what's it called? What do you call a typical game? Not adversarial necessarily, but basically turning into, yeah, so competitive versus co-op. So this variation where you have everybody controlling a single pawn and they can trade cards, then it's more of a co-op game. And so then there are obviously variations on that. So there are there are quite a few board games that are co-op. And I hadn't actually, when I designed the game, I hadn't thought about co-op. In fact, it was much more adversarial in its original incantations. So for example, these red cards could be used sort of as attack cards, and you can play them against an opponent. Versus the way I think about it now is when you get one of these tech neglect cards, it's like you discover that in your own code base. Yeah, Pandemic is a great example. That's what. So right now I'm just gonna have two variations, and of that I'm gonna focus on the competitive variation first. So somebody creates a game. The host, do they have to be part of the team? Sure, I think that's an okay restriction. Yeah, passing cards around would be in the co-op version. But I want to make sure that I don't see that as when I get to yeah, I don't see that as something that is sort of an architectural decision. That I think is just implementation. The thing around player to pawn ratio, that feels a bit more certainly high level design. Because now it's like a player may or may not have a pawn. Yeah, so that might be more involved. So the order, so the flow, the way things happen. Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it owned by the game as versus owned by, I could add an intermediary object, right? So I could create, for purposes of internal structure, literally a thing called a group that very much is, from a pawn point of view, the group owns the pawn as opposed to a player, and then players belong to the group. But I think I think that we can figure that out. It wouldn't be owned by the host because the host just initiates the game. It's really the group that's actively playing it. Because yeah. Do I want a game master view? I definitely want a game master view. Yes. Because certainly, while I'm testing this thing, or even while I'm, I might be, I might be a coach who's facilitating 4 games that are being played, and I want to take a look at them. And dragons. And I would like sort of an admin version where I can force things to happen, because I might want to. Well, there are 2 reasons for that, actually. So maybe it's not just admin. Maybe there's a coach role. So this is really interesting because as a coach, this is literally what I do, is throw a wrench in the works. Kite? Is that a kite? Hold on, I have to switch to this view. It is a kite. Okay. That looks like a dragon to me. All right. I really like this. So it's interesting because one of the things I like to think about is, as an operator of this system, I would like to have observability and be able to see things and control things. But it turns out as a coach, I want to do that too. And this creates some complex permission stuff issues that eventually I'll have to figure out. Because a coach is attached to teams. Whereas an admin is, you can sort of think of as like a super coach. They can do anything to any game. So one of the interesting things that I really want for the implementation is very much replayability, in the sense of, how did we get here? What happened? So a little bit around analytics, because I want to foster basically provide data for a retrospective that you want to do either while the game's playing or at the end. And a replay, like show me the game, how it progressed, you know, at obviously faster than real-time speed. So I want to make sure that that is possible. So a host creates a game. Player joins a game, however they got there. And then at some point the game starts, because obviously not everybody's going to join, you know, at precisely the same time. So there has to be some trigger, right? To say, let's start the game. What is it? That's annoying. So create the game, join the game, and we start a game. So as part of start game, cards are dealt. Have to figure out who goes first. So since it'll be looking something like this, you know, there'll basically be people around here and here, sort of at the edge. And it'll proceed, what, clockwise? If anybody knows what that is anymore. Where was, there was something, I don't know whether it was a TV show or something else, where it's like, they said clockwise, but they actually motioned counterclockwise. And I'm like, oh man. So I was like, did I put enough sweetener in my coffee? Tastes a little. So decks are shuffled, cards are dealt, starting player is chosen, pawns placed at first tile. What else? I think that's it. And so once the game is started, now it's player one plays. Yes, children these days are very much used to swiping to get stuff to happen. No comment on that. unless anyone has a better idea, I think I'm just going to implement these pieces. So, or maybe I'll start with one. I was going to start with two that and create the game internally. But I may as well start with one. So what do we want that to look like from an interaction? You start with three. The thing is, like, this code is almost all there. I have none of this code. Yes, I'd like to start with four, but that's going to require a whole bunch of stuff. I don't think this will take that long. So what do we need to create a game? I like to give things names, so we'll have a name. So let's enter a name. I mean, I can think of other things like I don't want more than 4 people to join or things like that, but I'm not going to worry about that. What do we call a game that hasn't started yet? Because there's definitely, right, so for a game that hasn't started yet, is that just a game that's not in that state? Or do I create a separate object for that? I don't know. That's probably overthinking. So I want to show, want to ask for a name for the new game. So we create, whatever we create, so now I want players to join. I'm starting off with competitive. So we create the game. Provide identifier link. That's right. So player joins game. So this way I sidestep the show me all games that are available. Basically type in the ID for the game. Hey there, JitterTed's. Welcome. Someone trigger start game. You seem to misunderstand what co-op means. Okay. So, that's it. Let's get started. So Dota Attitude had to reference the refactoring book today. Sound like they wanted to rewrite the whole project. Oh, yeah. Well, refactoring is hard. It's easier. It's often easier to just rewrite it if it's small, which is a form of refactoring depending on where you do that. So can we turn this into a test? What's our first test? What do we call yes, there are cooperative, there are all sorts of co-ops. Yeah. I hesitate to call it game service. We'll call it GameCreator. How about that? So let's go ahead and create a gamifier. That will be in our application layer. And we'll just create a class. And I'm creating the class first, even though we're doing TDD, just so I have something to start with. So we'll call this GameCreator. And then we'll immediately jump to creating a test, because then it will create the correct packages and things like that. All right. Let's keep this somewhere. Let's, oops, put that over there. We'll put that down there, and there we go. I didn't commit anything. Let's go commit. I'll just update it. And I pushed it too. Remind me to push if I don't push. I'd like to keep it pushed. So, so what we're going to get from the outside world is, I want to create a game. There's nothing it provides, so I don't need to start there. So really the first thing that happens from the outside world is a host created a game with a name. Do I need to attach it to a host? I think I'm gonna put that aside for now. So our first test is something like something like that. So we'll create a GameCreator. And with that GameCreator, create new game with actually I'm just going to call it because that's really kind of not relevant. So that fails. Let's go and create the method. We actually do want to hold on, so let me undo that. This should return a game. We will have to create that class. That goes in the domain. Why is it not syncing? That's really weird. See that? Put it in the right place. Did it put it in the right directory? Put it in the right directory. I don't know what was up with that. That will flip over to here. Go back to here. Create this thing. Yes. Yes. Why are you not... Oh, it put it in... Put it in the test directory, didn't it? Yes, it did. And it was staring me in the face and I didn't realize it. All right, let's try that again. There we go. Return null is fine. And I think the first thing we can... First thing we can assert is that the created game is not null. Which will fail because it is null, so that's easy enough. Let's go ahead and start creating some test configurations. I can remove that and remove that, and this will be our IO free tests, which we'll store as a project file, and we'll save it. That's fine for now. Unsurprisingly fails for the right reason. Now we can do a new game. That will now pass. I think we can say that the created game's name is the name we assigned. Boolean. And that is equal to name of game. That'll fail because it's null. Say name of game. That'll pass. We can refactor. We can basically promote this to a field. Nope. and we'll define it in the class constructor. And then we'll push this out as a parameter. And now here, this will now fail because we've hard-coded it, but then we'll be able to replace it with this parameter. Now that'll pass. Excellent. All right, let's do a commit. I would like to not have to, let's see. Forget where that setting is. So I want to optimize, but I want to commit without, I just want to commit, push, I mean. I don't remember how to do that. That's what I want. No. I don't want that at all. There we go. All right, so that's basically that. Now we need a game to have some identifier. This is not necessarily the entity's identifier. This I'd like to be more of a, and I've used this elsewhere, sort of a human readable name. Hey, Sweetie, welcome. So, I think I can drop down to the game level. And flip that over. So this is new game has human readable identifier. I think I want to use a library for that, but let's write our test first, and then we'll get that going. So if I say there's no way the test can define whether it's human readable, so I'm just going to say non-null identifier. New game assigned identifier. Yeah, the Windy Dolphin, right? Yeah, I'm gonna steal it from the format hero, whatever the library was, because that one was fine. So we create a game. And we'll say and we'll assert that name. I want to call this ID because it's not really an ID. Human readable, all right, ID. Can't think of a better name right now, so I'm going to say human readable ID. Dota2 Attitude asks, why not start step 5? Because I'm trying to do so. One thing I found is sometimes if you start too deep, you end up in a somewhat awkward state. So I really want to do at the start of the, what do you want to call it? Use case. Especially since these steps are really not very long. So let's go create this. Before we create it, I want to see if I say is not empty, is not null, and is not empty or blank. Let's create this. I was hoping that if I had those asserts, it would IntelliJ would offer something other than Boolean as the return value, but clearly it's not. So we'll just say string. Blank is non-white space. Okay. Well, I don't want to use name because there's already a name. I'm not sure about handle. Yeah, one thing I want to do with this is I kind of want to have, I want to pretty quickly get to something that's visible, because it's nice to see visible progress. Display name, I'm not sure that's any better. Y'all keep working on that. Let me know what you find. So this will fail because it's null. Oops. Return empty string. So now it's blank. And now it's not blank. Well, I will need an actual ID that's going to be completely separate from this human readable ID. I mean, I could generate a more readable ID from the ID. So the idea behind this identifier is I want something that's easily typed into a box, a text box, so that somebody can say, hey, can you join the Windy Dolphin 68 game? And they type that in. So like you could easily share that in other ways. Might be a bit of Yagni, but that's what we got. Yeah, so there are a lot of these kinds of things where it's you want something that's sort of easy to say out loud. Handle. Maybe. Then let's try it on for size. So we'll create a game. And then we'll create another game. And we'll basically assert that game one human readable ID is not equal to game two. I don't know why this got to be name. Okay. So that's an interesting question. How does the game get a human readable ID? That's where we bring in a library. Now, I feel like introducing a port is a bit of overkill right now. So this test will certainly fail because we're always returning the same handle. I guess I like handle. Let's rename it. I don't need a library. I could do it myself, but why would I do it myself? Yeah, I don't think I need a. I'll introduce a port later. So let's go grab that library. I forget which one it was. Format Hero used it. There it is. Oh, I wonder if the library's been updated. I forget. I hadn't checked in a while. So let's go to our POM. Is there an updated? Let's go take a look. Oh, it's totally a thing. Oh, they're on v4. Okay. What came out in v4? Ah. Oh, custom random. It says interesting. Yeah, so I actually contributed some stuff so that it could be incorporated into a native image. But now they're up to v4. All right, let's grab v4. Yeah, so just to be clear, this handle is solely for I want to find this game with something that's human readable versus here's what's basically a random number unique identifier that's for the database. All right, so here what we want to return instead, actually we probably want to make this a field. And this is our handle. May as well have this injected into the game, so that way the domain object itself is not referencing the class. So let's push this out. We'll go to GameCreator, and so here we'll extract this to a variable. All our tests should still pass or fail as they were before. And now we can basically say, I forget how we call it. I can just pull this port over so we have it. So we'll just grab that. Oops. There we go. So now I think that'll pass. No? What did I do wrong? Oh, that got propagated too far. Yeah. Then this doesn't make sense at this level. So let's move this test to where it belongs, which is here. So this is, instead of new game, it's okay. Right, so many people might call their game, TDD game, but they'll still be unique. So this should now work. Yes, okay. All right, so we'll check that off. We'll commit. Games now have unique handles. And we'll commit and push. Okay. I might even default it to that, sure. Yeah, you can if you can put emoji in there if you want, sure. All right, so now now we want a player to be able to join a game. So this is going to require us to introduce this idea of a player. So let's clarify what we mean by player. And then I need to take a quick break. something like that. So the idea is that you certainly would support for someone who's in the system, they have an account, they could play one or more games. Well, they could play 0 more games. But when they're in a game, they are a player. All right, so that's what player means. So there's going to be all sorts of stuff around this other subdomain. Not this. So there's all this subdomain stuff. Teams, player. So this is really account, not player management, but more account group management. Sorry, account team management. And so in here, why is that blue? In here, we've got player and game, host, etc. Yeah, subscription as in payment. This is not going to be a free game. Yeah, there are some data faker, which is a tool that will create a bunch of interesting and sometimes fun data. We're going to be event sourcing all the things. So one thing, so from an architectural standpoint, I'm all in on event sourcing. Might even have a flavor of CQRS, even though there'll only be one database. There'll still be 2 separate sort of pipelines. Yeah, eventually it will be linked to Stripe and PayPal, but that's getting way ahead of myself. It's interesting you mentioned subscription, because one of the problems with using something like Stripe for my subscription handling, while that means I don't have to develop it, it does mean that I now can't use another payment service without having to write the subscription stuff myself. So I will unlikely be using that. In fact, actually, what am I saying? I'm not going to be using Stripe. I will be using a merchant of record. So merchant of record, one of the advantage of a merchant of record is I don't have to deal with taxes. VAT, GST, sales, I don't want to deal with it. And so I don't have to. And so I will be handling the subscription stuff internally. Yeah. One thing I've learned over the years is don't do that stuff yourself. Are they dealing with time zones too? Time zones aren't going to be a problem here. Unless you're saying, like, when does the subscription end? That's actually an interesting question. But if we're concerned about my subscription ended 8 hours earlier than I thought, I'm really not going to worry about that. All right, let me take a quick break, and when we come back, so we've got the human readable handle being generated, but now we want to be able to do something with that game given a handle. So I'll be right back after this short coffee break. All right, and we're back. And yeah, I suspected you were mostly joking, Suiji, about the time zones, but time zones are everywhere, and yeah, it's like if you run into problems, it's either DNS or time zones. That's what it certainly seems like. All right. So we've got that. We've got the handle. So let's see. So the next thing we want is for players to join a game. Now, taking a step back and thinking about aggregates, game is an aggregate. I think this is very much going to be like, for those of you in the ensemble, very much going to be like the blackjack game. So players, in this case, players by definition only make sense in the game aggregate. So they will be a full-fledged object. They will likely have some kind of account ID that links them to another aggregate because that's in another subdomain. Right, because these are basically our subdomains. So what? So players join game. What does that mean? Yeah, aggregate in English it means a number of different things, but in the context of domain-driven design, it has a fairly specific meaning. and it's mostly about your transactional boundary. So I want to be able to modify game state, but while that's happening, while a game is being played, somebody could pay their subscription, and those are two completely disjoint transactions. Yeah, separate documents in a MongoDB is another way of looking at it, because those are for sure separate things. They may have copies of information, but they're certainly separate transactions. So I think there's a deeper question of here of what does it mean to join a game? Does it mean they are in the list of players? And is it a list of players or is it a set of players? Try not to overthink this. So hey, I already agreed with you that cars are value object. No, I'm kidding. So when do I want to add repository? Yeah, players are not interchangeable. Because there's a lot here. So players join game means that game has to track players. That does not require a repository, except that it does because they're joining using an identifier, whether it's a database identifier or some other identifier. It's an identifier, and whenever I see identifier, I always think who knows all the things, and that's a repository. So on the one hand, I'm a bit not wanting to go there. On the other hand, there's no other way I can do this without having a repository. Player needs reassignable ID. Tell me more. I'm not sure I see that. Players will have identifiers, but really they'll be sort of the scope of their identifier is the game. That's an interesting question. So that's a restriction that a player who's already joined can't join again. Let's add that as a sub step for this. So this is misleading. Players don't join because players don't exist until you. Yes, Jonas picked that up. Players don't exist until they join a game. So we just said that there's team subscription and there's basically also, whoops. Let me finagle with this for a second. So there's accounts or users. Yeah, either way. There's people. And teams are made up of multiple accounts. But you become a player when you join. And so if I, so there's joining a game, which is a separate thing than reconnecting, although they might look the same from the outside. Yeah, well, we'll get to subscriptions in a few months. So it's not players join game. It's not sure if this is a separate item yet, but it's basically well, so I was gonna write a person can't join the same game twice. In other words, they can't control two players, or can they? I think I'm gonna say no. So a persistent game always reloads, right? So that's the thing about any sort of these web apps, is you're always loading the game, doing an operation, then persisting it, and then it's gone from memory. But a game that's in progress, so a game that has not been started. So again, there's a difference between a person joining a game and becoming a player, and a person rejoining a game because they got disconnected. Yeah, I don't think I'd be going by IP. I'd be going by, you have to log in, right? So there's login stuff, which I'm not going to worry about. And now we know who you are as a person. And now if you want to join the game, you say join the game, you give it the ID, and it says, oh, you're already there, so I don't need to do anything. Yeah, connecting is technical, and reconnecting is technical. But the operations that you do look the same to the user, right? Because the steps are, if I just got disconnected, how do I reconnect? I go to the site. I might already be logged in because I have a cookie. If not, I log in. Now it knows who I am as a person. And I click the button that says join game and type in the ID. And it would recognize, because the person has a unique identifier, oh, they are already in this game as this player who has an identifier. So there's a mapping between, so the player has who's the user that is you know, the puppeteer. So JitterTed's attitude mentions seats. That concept might come in handy, but I don't think so just yet. Does the game stop when a player is lost? So if they get disconnected? If it's their turn, that's an interesting case. Well, I'm thinking both UX and domain at the same time. Because I'm thinking, like, what does it look like to to the outside, but internally, there's person. How do you join a game? A person joins a game, and they are now a player in that game. Yeah, there's going to be some kind of timer. You're going to have some kind of time limit. My baseline assumption, though, like that's a nice to have. My baseline assumption, though, is that these are people who know each other, and are likely connected using Zoom or Google Meet or something like that. So my intent is not to create something where there's no other communication. My intent is that this is you're playing the game together with at least audio, and that this is the platform that you're playing the game on, but that there is the main channel of at least audio, if not audio and webcam. Yeah, I don't know that I want to get into text chat. I think I'd like to stay away from text chat. And yes, if I wanted to create a timer, I've already got one. That code would be quite reusable. I mean, because honestly, like that's the main point of the game is like, it's not just the game. While you can enjoy it on that level, really the power is fostering those discussions of, what happens if you darn it, my prediction was wrong again. Maybe I should write less code. Those kinds of things. Okay. So if we have, so a game exists, we want to join it. That means I need to know, that means the game needs to have an identifier. We already have that. That's the handle. In competitive games, you have no friends. So what do we observe? We ask the game, so it's no longer the game creator use case. This is now the game joiner. So let's so we want a game joiner. And so our test is trying to think of a different word than becomes. So the idea is there's a person, and I say game joiner, person joins handle identified by handle. Result is Thank you. So Esther says, isn't it a player joiner? I think of it as the player joining a game. But I see what you're saying. Player joiner just sounds weird. That's why. I think it's okay for now, but I think player joiner just, I mean, really, if these are more granular use cases, it's really player joins game, if I want to phrase it that way, as opposed to a more verb kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could read this as I'm joining games together, or player join. It could be I'm joining players together, but it's really player joins game. Do I want to phrase it that way? It's not the way I usually do it, but there is a certain appeal to that. No, I will not be integrating Facebook. Let's try this. I mean, yeah, game joiner joins games together. That's not what we want. Let's phrase it this way. So we're actually being a bit more granular, very much more command-like. So let's see. So for this, we're going to need a person. So we'll create a person. Ooh. Person. Person. Let's do person. Create that class. That goes in the domain, but it goes in there. And so now we create player joins game. And so we basically give it the handle. We need to come up with some other ones besides this, but this will work for now. So that's the game. Although I guess I should probably do person first. I think that's what I want. What does this return? I think this should return... This should return a player. So I'll create a player. And we will join them. Yeah, if you really get down to this is a command object, then you pretty much just do execute or something. So there's two things we want here. One result is the game has the player. The other result is player has the person's ID. Okay, that's annoying. Okay, I just turned you off. Why are you still... I turned you off. Why are you still complaining? Whatever. So I think the first thing I can ask the player... no, first thing I'll ask is the game has a player. Which means I need to create a game that is this. Actually, this will be the game's handle. So I need to create a game. I really do wonder what the algorithm that IntelliJ uses in this situation. Like, it can infer, here's a good variable name for this class. I don't know why it can't go the other way. Yeah, I don't understand that rule either. Like, it doesn't recognize new lines as being an appropriate separator in that case. So create a game. Oh, right, we give it a handle. So here's where we can say Windy Dolphin. Or do I just go through the game's creator? I think I should go through the game creator. Yeah, I'll let it come up with it. Yeah, confused Turing. Yeah, it comes up with some fun stuff. So here, player should not be null. And we can then assert that the game... Do I ask the game, do you have this player? Or do I just expose the players? I'm going to need the players anyway, so I'll just expose it. Technically, players, the list of players is a group. No, not that group. My own group. Actually, I feel like that's a big step. So I'm gonna go back to this. I will likely need group, but I'm not ready to commit to that yet. Okay. So this test will fail because the player is going to be null because we're returning null. And that's indeed how we are failing. So let's go to our join method. Right, so it expected this to not, players to not be null, so we'll go there here. So what is this won't work because the equals won't work. Yeah, I could return an empty list, but I'll go one step further. This won't work because they're not equal. Yeah. So let's go into player and hey, he's approved of taking big steps. Just you might regret it. I was about to add an ID here, and I'm wondering if I want, probably not now, but very soon, I think I will incorporate some of the JMolecule stuff around identifiers. But for now, we'll just create a I'm going to use long, even though normally I'd use an identifier because I'm not sure of that transition. So it's probably simpler to go this way. And this is ID. And we'll create a getter for that. And we'll add it as a constructor parameter. Might need a no argument constructor. Okay. Oh, the whole point of that was I was going to define equals. There we go. Oh, yeah. Why? Thank you. All right, so we got our equals and hash code. This should still fail. Uh-oh. If they're the same instance, true. If they're not the same instance, if it's not even an instance of player, false. If this dot ID equals so I'm puzzled at the pattern matching. I was under the impression, the clearly wrong impression, that the scope of this variable was this block. But clearly that's not true. I just learned something new about pattern matching. I guess I kind of assumed that when you do an instance of you basically can define a new variable. But I thought it'd be the scope of this block, but it's clearly not. Huh? Look at that. So what this is saying is that if you got two new objects that don't have IDs, they are not the same. Yeah. Is there another equals? It's a deep equals. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I just saw that. I'm like, we should have an equals. There's not going to be much to say other than, at least right now, the identifier. Oh wait, are you kidding, string joiner? Seriously? Actually, that's not so bad. When it gets longer, that'll be nice. Yeah, okay. So Jonas, you think if I remove this, even though that would change its behavior, that the scope of this would no longer exist? You're right. That's really interesting. The scope rule on that, though, it just seems weird because I guess I guess that makes sense from a data flow standpoint, but that's, yes, I think that's unexpected. I mean, it's cool, but it's certainly a gotcha because I can imagine what the bytecode generated looks like. No, the bytecode won't matter because this is at the I don't know. That's just, thank you for pointing that out, because at least now that makes a bit more sense. In fact, does that mean that player is not valid in here? That's unexpected. It makes sense now that I see it this way. But yeah, that's not that would not be my initial guess for how that works. But of course, right? So it's basically saying, yeah, okay, yeah, there's a little bit of a sharp edge. Luckily, the compiler helps us a lot. Okay, that was a today I learned thing. What were we trying to do? Oh, right. Okay. So, so when a player joins a game, when they're added as a player, they get an ID. So it's not just that player is not null. I think we can put that aside for now, and I think we can say that the ID is not null. And that'll certainly fail. So we need to give them an ID when they join. Yeah, I don't think you can have a player with a null ID. That doesn't make any sense. Because a player cannot exist outside the scope of a game, and therefore they must have an identifier. Yeah. So let's nail that home. So you can't do that. And then therefore this is final. And yeah. So then it can't be null, which means we can back off on our equals. But I'll leave it there. It doesn't hurt. So now we need to come up with an identifier. Well, for now, I'll just hard code it. Sure. Is it suggesting turn into a record? Yes, it is. Okay, but we're not. This should still fail because now both IDs are 1. No, because my test is saying that that's what it's going to be. Right. So the player ID should not be null, and the players should have player with ID of 1. Okay, so that should actually now pass. No, it won't, because the player will not be null. It will be assigned an ID. But when they join, we don't do anything with the game. So from the game's point of view, and I wonder if that's maybe a different test. Well, it's really about joining the game. I think I'm okay with that. Yeah, I don't think I need to do a null check on an ID, because eventually that will become some other structure. Actually here, now we should basically return an empty list. So it'll fail because it doesn't contain that. That's unsurprising. Yeah, I guess for the way I've done things, that internal constructor is not exposed to anything outside the application, and so it should never sort of be poisoned by bad input. But I could totally understand wanting to be overly protective because, yeah. So Shandu 16, how to master OOP. I think that's a great question to ask in my Discord. You'll get, there's a bunch of resources and you'll get resource suggestions from there. So if you're not already a member of the Discord, because it's not something I can basically give you the answer, because the answer is essentially write code and get feedback. But you probably want some good guides for that, and that's a great question for the Discord. Yeah, exactly. Destroy all bad data, not just nulls, but basically all invalid data as early as possible. Yeah, and if you're using Mockito to do that, well, you deserve what you get. So let's promote this to a field. This is going to be players, class constructor. We can basically say this is, actually, let's do this. We can say this is new array list, which should still fail. And then we can promote that to our constructor. Well, that's a bummer. We don't need that part. That should still fail. Except what I wanted to do was move the assignment to the field decoration. That should still fail. And now, so I've been kind of wondering about this. Is it the player joins game responsibility to do the lookup of the handle, or is that done elsewhere? Because if I make it the player joins game responsibility, then it has to know about all game handles and have a map of handles to games. Yeah, the 1L hard-coded assertion will certainly go away once we start generating identifiers. Yes, the here's a handle, give me the game is definitely a repository responsibility. I've been sort of trying to avoid creating a repository. I could hard code a little further. Except because I've got GameCreator separate from player joins game, I can't really avoid it. If they were in the same class, then I could basically hold on to this game, and then this could use it without bothering to look up the handle. But I think this is, yeah, this. I think I need the repository. Yeah. Shandu16, that's where you might get some help in the Discord. Yeah, I was thinking that too. Yeah, let's do that. Is DDD only relevant to microservices? No, in fact, DDD works well with any complex, any non-trivial domain. So if you're doing a CRUD-like thing where you're just reading and writing to a database, you don't need DDD. You probably will want it anyway, though. And microservices is not anything you should be starting with. If you're thinking about getting started with OOP, put microservices out of your head. So what did we just break? Nothing. All right. So do that. Yeah, if you want to get better at OOP and get experience with it, you should not be worried at all about those deployment architecture level things. I will put my usual rant in one line, which is don't do microservices unless you have at least 20 people who are engineers. If you have fewer than that, you have really kind of no business doing microservices for the most part, or you have to be really aware of why you're doing them. I know I just said I wouldn't do a rant, but I came across something on LinkedIn, and it was explaining microservices, and I'm like, the number one reason you go to microservices is because your team is too big. Period. End of story. Java grunt. I'm dissing microservice. No. All right. So player joins a game. They join the game. So when they join the game, it's actually the game that generates the player, not the application. So, so this will still fail because they're still not in the game. Yeah, you know, I really do feel like all the good stuff that has served me well over the decades, nobody cares about because they just want to do microservices, not do TDD, and organize their code in ways that make no sense. I really do feel like I'm sometimes swimming against the tide. Because, yeah, anyway. All right, so what we want to do is we want the game to actually generate the player. So let's grab this out, extract this to... can't think of a better name. I'm just going to call it join. And then do I make this static? Why is my make static not working? That's weird. I don't know why that didn't work. So let's take this method. We'll move it over to game. Yeah, the Sam Newman book, I think is pretty much on target. So what we want game join, but what we want is to pass in person. Actually, let me undo that. I want to do this a different way. Let me hand in person. Oh, actually, let me hand in person in game. And then what I'm going to do is say game. Oh, darn it. Hold on. Let me make this unstaticify it. Pass in person in game. Why did it change it? Oh, because I've... Let's try it one more time. Join game. And this is join game. And this is person and game. It wanted me to write a recursive method. An infinite recursive method. Okay, so let's change signature. Because what I want is I want to prepare this method to be moved over to game. That's what I want. Yeah, so AI, microservices, I consider those fashion. And eventually they will become just tools instead of main focus. All right, so now we can take this and move this to game. And that's what I wanted. So now, and then I can rename this back to just join. This should still fail in the same way. And now I can go here, extract this to a variable, add it to the the list of players. And now it'll pass. Awesome. Hey there, B1G Blaster. I don't usually get compliments on light theme. Usually people complain, but yeah, exactly. Right. Okay. So we now have the player with a player ID. It's hard coded. Eventually that'll come out in the wash. Now what we want to make sure is that it looks great. It looks great on the TV. Look, Mom, on TV. Now we can assert that the player person ID is equal to whatever this is, which it doesn't have one yet. Oh, Jonas. Well, you asked for it. Dark mode it is. Which one do I want? Did they change something here? Because now there's two separate things. There's the theme and then there's the color scheme. That must be new. Shows you the last time I changed appearance. Let's go to Jerry Dark. Does that just change? What does that change? Oh, interesting. It literally just changes the editor color scheme. All right, let's not do that. Let's go to the theme default. Oh, that's really interesting. Does that count as dark mode? Hey, it's dark. No, let's go to Jerry Dark. There we go. Oh my. Okay. No, darker. Do I work with other languages? Not really. I do some JavaScript, TypeScript stuff. But Java's my main gig. All right, let's set our dark mode timer. You redeemed 10 minutes. And so there we go. Ah, Java Grunt, thank you so much for your 100 bits. Nice to see you. All right, so let's do that. And let's do that. I gotta say, I'm gonna fumble around a bit here because dark mode is so different. How many points for 10 minutes of dark gray on black? I think the only person who probably has enough points for that, which would be almost infinite, is probably Wheatlol, because he might even be lurking. Because I don't think he's ever spent any points. Okay, so we're saying is that player person ID is going to be the same ID as this person ID here. So we'll create a constructor there. We'll create a field for it. What's it complaining about? Oh, okay. And let's create a getter for it. What's the problem here? I didn't return. Yeah, I can't even write a regular method in dark mode. Transstars probably has a bunch of points too, yeah. And now we want player to have person ID, so we'll go ahead and create that method. That will be... The more I type long, the more I'm like, I need to move over to J molecules. We'll return null, sure. Let's move you up though. And anyway, you should be on the right side. Okay. Yeah, B1G Blaster, it's one of those, like, I've been doing Java since 96. Yes, I'm old. And there was never really a language that, like, when C# came out, it was pretty much a copy of Java, so I'm like, why would I switch? JavaScript wasn't very useful as a language for quite some time. And the companies I work for, they were all doing Java, so I continued doing Java. And now Java is awesome. I mean, it's always been awesome, but once they went to six month release cycles, that's where stuff really started getting good. It does mean we won't see string templates though until next year, which is a bummer. Okay, so this will fail because we're never storing person ID on player. So person ID will just be null. So this will be null. Right. So now what we need, when we create a player, it gets an ID, but it will also get a person ID. Who calls this? So just in a couple places. Do we... Wait, where else did it... Player joins game test. Oh, right there. Okay. Interesting. So we use it here is the only other use of the constructor. Yes, I said I was old. My last name is Young, so I'll always be young, but I've been around for a while. Okay, so I think let's go ahead and add in what we expect this to be is actually 27L. Because that's the person ID. And let's change that to L. And we'll default it to 0. And this is person ID, so let's rename that. And let's create a field for it. And we'll create a... Oh, we have a method for it. So this will still fail because this will work fine. Turns out that this value might not matter, but it's not part of its equality. I'm all right with that for now. This is the one that matters, and this will fail because it's still null. Right? But now we can actually return person ID. And now, is that going to pass? No, it won't pass because when we actually add the player, we give it 0. So we expect it to fail because 27 is not 0. Look at that. So now what we can do is say this comes from person ID. Now that should pass. Voila. All right. So now we look at Jira. So person joins the game. We don't have the human readable handle thing. We'll worry about that when we get to the inbound adapter or maybe some higher level application service. I don't know. So person becomes a player when they join the game. Yeah, that's what this does. This is turning a person into a player. Poof, you're a player. So we'll check that off. This does not exist yet. If a person tries to join the game twice, we will end up with 2 players. Yeah, B1G Blaster, I totally agree. Like, Java is not cool. Let's see. So what have I got? Let's do a commit because we've done a bunch of things. So to me, you know, at least in the programming language world, like cool for me sort of is associated with fashionable, and Java is definitely not fashionable. But I think fashion is also something that, you know, doesn't have solid core principles or something. I don't know. And also changes very quickly. Let's see. So, all right. Yeah, so it's a good question of why have a separate identifier for a player if it's always going to be that a person can't join twice. That feels like so there's definitely for me a feeling of like I don't like that. There's something not quite right. And if I do end up saying, huh, you want to join 2 games, you want to join twice as, you know, the same person but be 2 different players, that's okay. And then if that happens, I don't like reusing identifiers in that way. So so even though, yes, technically I don't need a separate identifier, I'm uncomfortable not having a separate identifier for a separate entity. All right, so, oh, look, dark mode is over. Phew. Get your sunglasses on. Is that a threat, Jonas? Hey, what happened? Is that a bug? I know I selected that. Hold on. Then I selected that. And it's weird that that became effective immediately. I didn't have to apply it. Then when I went back to IntelliJ Light, that was weird. It's the color scheme had stuck. You got the points. I'll I'll abide. Do you want your celebrate points back, Astrid? Because were you celebrating light mode? So let's see. I don't have my confetti set up for OBS, which is what I use for streaming here. I have the confetti set up for when I pair with Mike. I have to get my confetti over here. Okay. Thanks, Java Grunt. Yeah, base Boolean map, absolutely. I mean, JavaScript, I know for me, when I finally went back to it, it's like, oh, this is actually an okay language. A lot of the yucky stuff was cleaned up, and I think there's still a lot of outdated opinions for Java as well for that reason. All right. Oh, Deshaun triggered the dark mode. All right. Okay. So what are we doing next? So a person becomes a player when they join the game. Technically, this isn't true yet. So I'm going to delete it. You would not trigger dark mode twice? Why not? What do I want to do next? Or would I? That's why I say, is that a threat? I would like to... Let's see. So player joins game. We do that because we're being given the game. And as I said, I'll handle the... Oh, no pun intended. I'll handle the handle later. We've got GameCreator. That's fine. Game has a list of players. I think we should add 2 players. So that way we can sort of force out the uniqueness of that identifier. Yeah, so that basically gets us, even though I'm already at the many stage, that gets us to the we didn't have the 0 stage. We could say a new game has no players, but I don't know. I feel like this is good enough. Okay, so let's do that. So 2 persons, plural person, yeah. Join existing game, then both added as players. So I'll create a I'll pretty much copy that. Both added as yes, different players. Thank you. So this is person, this is first person, and then second person. Yes, I do have these lines separating it because I found that when there was no line separators, it was actually harder to read. And here the white space isn't going to confuse anyone to say, oh, well, there's white space around this. This must not be the assertion part of your test. I think that's pretty clear that we are now, from here and below, we're in the assertion part. So, yes. So we will join one person. Sorry, first person. I know, that's what went through my head, Astra. It's like first person and third person. So this is first player, second player, second person. And so our expectation is player IDs are going to be assigned. Do we want to say that they're not equal to each other? I guess that's what we're saying is assert that first player is not equal to second player. I think that'll fail because they're both getting the same player ID. That's because, see, okay, prediction failed. Yes. So prediction failed because the test is wrong. I'm like, that's not right. So yes, pass for the wrong reason. Absolutely. Unexpected. That's actually because my test was wrong. All right, so this should fail because they are actually the same, right? So one of the things I've been trying to do is log when that happens, because what I want is to go back, pull out the fragments of video where it's like, look, prediction failed for this reason. Look, prediction failed for this reason. So this time prediction failed because test was broken. Yeah, test coverage and tests that are passing, if they're broken, aren't really helpful. Have I ever tried playing the game while coding? No. But we will once the game is bootstrapped enough. We can start playing it. And I'm pretty much gonna optimize for getting the WebSocket. Like, I really do want to do as full a vertical slice as I can to get so that y'all can join in. All right, so test fails for the right reason. So let's go fix that. So who gets to generate this ID? I think this is just going to be like an atomic integer or something, an atomic long or something. So let's do that. Oh, what's Pretzel playing? Oh, Silent Night. Player ID generator. So the player ID generator, we want increment. We want get an increment. So that should now pass. So that passed. Unsurprisingly, I broke another test. Remember that hard-coded 1L? That is now broken. I think what we can do is we can say has size of 1. And then extracting player person ID. That contains exactly that. And I feel like this might even be redundant now. I'll leave it, but actually I think it belongs up here. All right, so that should now pass. And it does. Awesome. Oh, dark mode is over. So we're gonna be ending soon anyway. Oh, 25 minutes. I'm not gonna be streaming for that long. So I'll give you can redeem a 10-minute if you want, but I'll reject that one. All right, so for next time, let's figure out what we're doing next time. Where'd that go? There we are. So they join. Person cannot join the same game twice. We didn't do that. We basically did we did that. So we basically did one in many. I don't feel the need to do 0. So next time we can do this. Are we ready to start a game? So let's look back here. Host creates a game. Player joins an existing game. Start a game. I think we are ready to start the game next time. And so sort of underneath that is also a constraint. I was going to put in a constraint that you can't add players once you've started. I don't know if I want to well... So I may want to relax this constraint later, but right now, to sort of protect myself, I'm going to say players can't join once game is started. So you show up late, too bad, but likely I will relax this constraint. Certainly I want to allow for people being added after the game starts. It's not a big deal. It just means I need to deal some more cards and assign a pawn and things like that. If they drop, it's a little bit more difficult, but that's not a huge problem. The cards go to the discard, the pawn goes away. So that's all fine. So this is really a temporary constraint. So once start game is triggered, action card deck shuffled. And cards are dealt to each player, and basically all, etc., all the other stuff. What else? Does that count as dark mode? It's against a dark black mat. Let's see. So we have taken our persons, we've turned them into players, we've added them, they get their pawn assigned, they get put here. Yeah, I think that's good. What else? So what gets me to a walking skeleton? I think I actually want to, once I guess I just said that, but that's really part of 4. So I think then next what I want to do is start implementing the adapters. Inbound adapter for post to create game. So this is going to be an HTTP adapter. So once the game has started, everything is WebSockets. And HTMX, of course. But at this point, it's still all HTTP. So the HTTP adapter, so host create game and person join game, that's all HTTP. Right, so you see a page, you click a button that so text box and submit button does a post, person join game, text box for handle, and submit button also does a post. How do we know who you are? I am going to need some kind of login-like thing. I don't want to pull in Spring Security because then that just starts making a whole bunch of things a little bit more difficult in terms of testing. On the other hand, yeah, I was, so here I am thinking about attack modes of people who are watching this stream. So if I allow if I allow you to supply your own name, I am opening myself up for not safe for work names. Let's put it that way. So my sudo login, sudo. So my sudo login is pick which person you are. So I'll generate a bunch of, generate a bunch of windy dolphins, and that is who you are. And then, yeah, and then that'll be good enough. Yeah, I could go with, I mean, sure. That's probably easier than the human readable IDs. All right, so we identify who you are. Only I as the host can create a game. Or not. Or I could go with not having a text box here. Okay, so you pick who you are as a person. You can then choose to create game as a host or to join a game. If you want to create game, then you just basically say create game button. And this one is join game. And then once you are in the game, no, I don't want yet a drop down for available games. The reason why is there's a lot of that requires me then to identify sort of teams and things like that. So I don't think I want that yet. So you pick who you are, you create a game, then you probably join the game you just created. Somebody else comes in to join that game as well. I probably need to limit how many players can join. So that'll probably be the next thing is I think I want to limit it to 4 for now. So one of the things I'm trying to figure out is, I'm sorry, this is no longer dark mode, but dark mode's over anyway. I'm not sure on the screen, can I fit 6 players? Because one of the things you kind of need to be able to see is the other player's hands. The other person's play area with their tech neglect area. I just don't know if I can fit 6 people on the screen. Require ultra wide screens. You must have $1,000 monitor in order to play this game. No. To be honest, I try to avoid more than 4-player games in person because it gets really slow. So I'm gonna limit it to 4 people for now. I mean, it'll be easy enough to change from a domain standpoint. It'll be the UI that'll be the tricky part. For now, there won't be much to display. Yeah. Okay. So once that happens, once everybody's joined, or at least once the game is created, then it's an inbound WebSocket adapter. Technically, it's also an outbound. So actually, I don't need the inbound just yet. I do need the outbound. Because what'll happen is once you post, you'll get redirected. That connects the WebSocket. And now everything is handled over the WebSocket. And the initial thing we'll see is etc. etc. So initially that'll just be a lot of text, and then so once I deploy it, then we can at least connect and look at that. If it yes, it will definitely be a duplex adapter, but I don't need the inbound stuff yet, so that's why I didn't add it. Once I add the inbound, it will share the underlying implementation, the adapter. I like duplex. I guess technically it's full duplex. It's duplex is fine. Back to my modem days. Yeah, so once I have the inbound, then the implementation will have to obviously share the WebSocket connection. But I'm trying to think of like what's the minimal I need to get it up and deployed. I don't have a Raspberry Pi yet. I do. I am going to place an order for one. But to get this deployed, this is all I need to get it to the point where, all right, the game started and we see the starting point. We can't do anything, but we can do that. We can get that far, and then I can deploy new versions with them being able to start playing the game. All right, I think that's it. That's all for today. My next stream will it be tomorrow? Am I streaming tomorrow? I might be streaming tomorrow. If not tomorrow, Friday. So as always, oh, thank you, commit and push. I will commit and push. Thank you for the reminder. Commit and push. Commit and pushed. So as always, the Discord is the best place to find out when I'm going to stream next. I give it a 50-50 shot whether I'll stream tomorrow. Actually, probably even less than that. Fridays is much more likely, though it'll be a slightly later start than today. Jonas, you made the whole thing. All right. Yeah, so thanks for joining, and thanks Java Grunt for your bits. Appreciate that, and thanks for, not sure if I should say thanks for all the dark mode, but thanks for participating and making suggestions. As always, it's what makes it fun for me. I really do appreciate you all. So that's it. I will see you next time. Have a good afternoon, evening, or night. For those of you on UTC Plus, you should be asleep by now or close to it. And I will see you next time.